I was in the middle of a board meeting when my phone started vibrating against the mahogany table. It wasn't a gentle buzz. It was the frantic, angry vibration of a caller who wouldn't take no for an answer. I glanced down. Mom. I rejected the call. I'm the chief financial officer for a mid-sized retail chain. We were discussing fourth quarter projections and a potential merger. I couldn't just step out to discuss my mother's latest crisis. But 10 seconds later, it buzzed again. And again. Then the text messages started flooding in, lighting up my screen so frequently that the CEO paused his presentation and raised an eyebrow at me. Pick up. Emergency. Kevin needs you. Don't be selfish, Bethany. It's about Christmas. I felt that familiar knot tighten in my stomach. That mix of guilt, obligation, and dread that I had been conditioned to feel for 38 years. I excused myself, stepping out into the cool, sterile hallway of the corporate office. Is Dad okay? I asked the moment I answered, my heart rate already spiking. Your father is fine. No thanks to you checking in. My mother, Linda, snapped. Her voice wasn't panicked, it was commanded. I need you to come to the lake house, today. I checked my watch. It was December 16th. Mom, we talked about this. I'm wrapping up the fiscal year. I have meetings until the 23rd. I'll drive up on Christmas Eve. That doesn't work for us anymore, she said, dismissive of my career as if I were working a lemonade stand. Kevin and Tanya are stressed. They need a break before the holidays. They're going to Cabo for a week to reconnect. They're leaving the kids at the lake house. I paused, trying to process the logic. Okay, so you're watching the kids? I can't watch 5 children, Bethany. I'm 68 years old. I have to supervise the renovations for the Christmas party. The contractor is a nightmare. I need you here to manage the kids and get the house ready for the guests. Mom, I have a job, a very demanding job. And Kevin doesn't, she shot back. Kevin hasn't held a steady job since 2018. He calls himself an entrepreneur, which is code for gambling away loans and asking me to cover his rent. Your brother is going through a hard time. He needs this vacation. You're single. You don't have a husband or kids. You're just sitting in that apartment with your spreadsheets. You can work remotely, can't you? There it was, the refrain of my life. You're single, so your time is public property. You have money, so you have no right to say no. I can't just leave, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And I'm not a babysitter. We are hosting 30 people on Christmas Day, Bethany. Important people. This is for the family's reputation. I need the house scrubbed, the guest rooms prepped, and the menu finalized. Unless you want me to cancel Christmas. Is that it? You want to break your nephew's hearts? She knew exactly which buttons to press. She weaponized my competence. She knew I was the only one who could actually organize the chaos that was my family. Fine, I sighed, defeated. I'll see if I can move some meetings, but I'm not paying for Kevin's trip. We already handled that, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just get here. Oh, and Bethany, the contractor says the deck needs another $5,000 for materials. Transfer it to my account before you drive up. I closed my eyes, leaning my forehead against the cold glass of the office window. I could see the city skyline, the world I had built for myself through grit and sleepless nights. And yet, one phone call dragged me right back to being the family ATM. I sent you $10,000 last week for the roof, I reminded her. Expenses come up. Stop being so stingy. You make more in a month than your brother makes in a year. Help your family. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I just hung up, opened my banking app, and transferred the money. Why? Because it was easier than fighting. Because deep down, a pathetic part of me still hoped that if I paid enough, if I worked hard enough, if I fixed enough problems, they would finally look at me and say, "Thank you, Bethany. We're proud of you." I walked back into the boardroom, my face composed, my emotions locked away. I told my assistant to clear my schedule for the next week. I told my boss I had a family emergency. He looked at me with sympathy. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "It will be," I lied. I packed my laptop, my files, and my suit. But before I left, I did something I had started doing 5 years ago. almost out of instinct. I downloaded the transaction receipt for the $5,000. I saved it in a folder on my encrypted cloud drive, labeled the black box. Inside that folder were receipts for everything. Kevin's bail money from 3 years ago, the medical bills I paid for Dad's surgery, the tuition for my oldest nephew, the mortgage payments. Thousands of documents. I didn't know why I kept them. I wasn't planning to sue my own family. I guess I just needed proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I was the one keeping the roof over their heads, quite literally. As I drove out of the city, heading toward the mountains, I had no idea that this trip wouldn't be just another week of servitude. I didn't know that the black box folder was about to become the most dangerous weapon in my arsenal. I was driving toward a cliff, and my family was getting ready to push me off. The drive to the lake house usually took 4 hours. I made it in 3.5, fueled by caffeine and a simmering resentment that I was trying desperately to suppress. The house was a sprawling, beautiful property overlooking the water, a place that should have been a sanctuary. But as I pulled into the gravel driveway, my stomach turned. Kevin's car was gone, so was Tanya's. They hadn't even waited for me to arrive before jetting off to their tropical paradise. I stepped out of my sedan, the crisp December air hitting my face. It was quiet outside, but the moment I opened the heavy oak front door, the noise hit me like a physical blow. Screaming, crash, thud. "Give it back, it's mine." I walked into the living room and froze. It looked like a bomb had gone off. Suitcases were exploded open in the hallway, clothes strewn everywhere, as if Kevin and Tanya had packed by throwing things into the air and seeing what landed in their bags. The living room floor was sticky. I could feel my heels peeling off the hardwood with every step. There were half-eaten slices of pizza on the coffee table, empty beer bottles lining the mantelpiece, and shattered ornaments from the Christmas tree crunching under my feet. My 5 nephews and nieces, ranging from age 4 to 12, were running feral. The 12-year-old, Brayden, was throwing a football against the newly painted interior wall, leaving black scuff marks. The 4-year-old was crying in a pile of laundry. And sitting in the middle of it all, on the pristine white sofa I had paid to have upholstered last year, was my mother. She was holding a glass of wine, staring at her iPad, completely oblivious to the anarchy around her. "I'm here," I announced, my voice cutting through the noise. Mom looked up, annoyed. She checked the grandfather clock in the corner. "You're late. You said you'd be here by 4. It's 4:15. I dropped my bags. "Hello to you too, Mom. Where is Dad?" "Fishing or hiding, who knows?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Look at this mess, Bethany. I told Kevin to clean up before they left, but they were in such a rush to catch their flight. You know how stressed Tanya gets about TSA lines. You need to get this sorted before the cleaning crew comes tomorrow, or they'll charge us extra for a hazard fee." I looked around the room. This wasn't just messy. This was disrespectful. "Mom, why didn't you stop Brayden from throwing the ball? He's ruining the paint." "Oh, let him be a child," she snapped. "You're always so uptight. That's why you're still single. Men don't like women who care more about paint than happiness." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. I walked over to Brayden. "Hey, buddy, outside with the ball, now." He looked at his grandmother. She didn't say anything. He smirked at me, threw the ball one last time, hard, hitting a framed photo of me, one of the few in the house, and knocking it off the wall. The glass shattered. "Oops," he said, zero remorse in his eyes, just like his father. "Brayden," I yelled. "Don't yell at him," Mom shouted, finally putting down her wine. "He's sensitive. God, you've been here 5 minutes and you're already causing drama. Just clean up the glass, Bethany, and get started on dinner. The kids are starving. They haven't eaten since breakfast because I was waiting for you to cook." I looked at the pizza boxes. "There's pizza right there." "That's old. They need a home-cooked meal. There's ground beef in the fridge. Make lasagna. Kevin loves lasagna. He'll want some frozen for when he gets back." I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of my brother's laziness and my mother's entitlement. I was a CFO. I managed a budget of $40 million. I had negotiated with sharks in suits, but here, in this house, I was nobody. I was the maid, I was the cook, I was the bank. I'm tired, Mom. I drove 4 hours. And I've been dealing with this noise all day, she retorted, standing up. I'm going to my room to take a nap before dinner. Don't wake me unless the house is on fire. And Bethany, make sure you scrub the toilets in the guest bathroom. Tanya said the plumbing was acting up. She swept out of the room, leaving me alone with 5 staring children and a floor covered in glass. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I did what I always do. I took a deep breath, took off my blazer, rolled up the sleeves of my silk blouse, and grabbed the broom. As I swept up the shards of my own picture frame, I looked at the photo. It was me at my graduation, smiling, hopeful. I threw it in the trash. The glass clattered loudly into the bin. I spent the next 6 hours working. I fed the kids, bathed the little ones, and bullied the older ones into putting away their devices. I scrubbed the sticky residue off the floor. I unclogged the toilet, which was clogged with a toy car. By the time the house was silent, it was nearly midnight. I was exhausted, my back aching, my hands dry and cracked from the cleaning chemicals. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the large bay window, looking out at the dark lake. The moonlight reflected off the water, cold and still. I thought I was alone. I thought everyone was asleep. But then I heard a voice drifting from the patio below. The French doors were slightly ajar. It was my mother. She was on the phone. I shouldn't have listened. A better person would have walked away. But something in her tone, a conspiratorial whisper, a giddy excitement, froze me in place. Yes, she's here. She's cleaning right now, Mom said, letting out a cruel little laugh. Oh, don't worry, Kevin. She has no idea. My blood ran cold. I stepped closer to the window, pressing myself against the wall so I wouldn't be seen. Just enjoy Cabo, sweetie, Mom cooed. Spend what you need to. By the time you get back, everything will be set. I'm going to announce it at the party on Christmas night. It'll be the perfect gift. Announce what? My grip on the water glass tightened. Yes, the deed is ready, she continued. Once the party is over and the guests leave, we'll tell her. She can finish paying off the party expenses first, obviously. We need her to cover the caterer and the liquor bill. But after that, well, it's your house, Kevin. You can decide if you want to let her visit or not. Personally, I think we should change the locks. She's getting too bossy. I stopped breathing. The world tilted on its axis. I know, Mom said, her voice dripping with affection for her golden son. She thinks she's so smart with her job and her money, but she's just the help, Kevin. She was born to serve us. That's her role. You're the heir. This house belongs to you. It always has. She hung up. I heard her footsteps retreating into the house. I stood there in the darkness, the glass of water shaking in my hand. Tears pricked my eyes. Hot, stinging tears of humiliation. She's just the help. She was born to serve us. For 38 years, I had tried to buy their love. I had tried to earn my place at the table. And all this time, they weren't just ungrateful. They were plotting against me. They were planning to bleed me dry one last time for a Christmas party, and then kick me out of the home I had saved. A sob rose in my throat, violent and choking. I wanted to fall to the floor and wail. I wanted to storm into her room and scream. But then, something snapped. It was a physical sensation, like a rubber band that had been stretched too far and finally broke, stinging my skin but releasing the tension. The tears stopped. My breathing slowed. The heat in my face cooled into ice. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. The tired, desperate woman who wanted her mommy's approval was gone. In her place stood the CFO, the strategist, the woman who fired incompetent employees for embezzlement. Mom thought she was playing a game. She thought she held all the cards because she was the matriarch. She forgot one thing. She forgot who paid the mortgage. She forgot who signed the checks. I wasn't the help. I was the owner, and it was time for an audit. The silence in the house was heavy, suffocating. Just minutes ago, it had felt like a tomb where I was burying my dignity.
Now it felt like a battlefield before the first shot is fired. I didn't go to sleep.
Sleep was for people who weren't about to lose their inheritance to a gambling addict. I walked quietly to the guest room, the small, cramped one facing the driveway, not the lake, because the master suite was for Mom and Dad, and the best guest suite was reserved for Kevin and Tanya's relaxation. I opened my laptop. The blue light illuminated my face in the darkness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. She thinks she's so smart. She's just the help. The words replayed in my mind on a loop. It wasn't just the cruelty, it was the stupidity. That was the thing about arrogance. It made people sloppy. Mom and Kevin were so convinced of their divine right to my resources that they hadn't bothered to check the paperwork in over 5 years. I logged into my secure cloud server. I bypassed the work folder and went straight to personal assets, then a subfolder, Lakeview LLC. See, 5 years ago, my parents were on the brink of bankruptcy. Kevin had gotten into trouble with some loan sharks, again, and my parents had drained their retirement and taken out a second mortgage on the lake house to bail him out. They were 3 months behind on payments. The bank was threatening foreclosure. They came to me crying. Mom had wept at my kitchen table, begging me to save the family home. "It's your father's legacy," she had sobbed. "Don't let them take it." So I fixed it. I always fixed it. But I was also a finance professional. I knew that giving them cash was like throwing money into a fire pit, so I didn't give them the money. I bought the debt. I created a limited liability company, LLC, solely in my name. The LLC paid off the bank, clearing the mortgage entirely. In exchange, the title of the house was transferred to the LLC. I had explained this to them at the time. I sat them down with a lawyer. I told them, "The house is now owned by the company. You can live there rent-free for the rest of your lives, provided you pay the utilities and taxes." They had signed the papers. They nodded. They thanked me. But I realize now, staring at the PDF of the deed on my screen, that they hadn't actually listened. They heard debt gone and we stay in the house. In their minds, nothing had changed. They still saw themselves as the owners and me as the bank. They thought the LLC was just some tax loophole I used to help them, a formality that didn't really mean anything. They forgot that in the eyes of the law, feelings don't matter. Signatures do. I opened the deed. There it was, clear as day. Owner, Lakeview Holdings, LLC. Sole member, Bethany J. Miller. A cold smile touched my lips. Mom was planning to give the house to Kevin on Christmas. She couldn't give him the house any more than she could give him the Statue of Liberty. But knowing I owned the house wasn't enough. I needed to know why this was happening now. Why the urgency? Why the secrecy? Kevin was lazy, but he wasn't usually proactive about property transfers. I picked up my phone and dialed the one person in this family who didn't view me as a walking wallet. "Bethany?" A groggy voice answered. "It's 1 a.m. "I know, Aunt Joyce. I'm sorry. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Aunt Joyce was Mom's younger sister. They hadn't spoken much since Mom accused Joyce of being jealous of Kevin's success, which was non-existent. "What is it, honey? Is everything okay?" "Mom is planning to give the lake house to Kevin for Christmas. She thinks she still owns it. Do you know anything about this?" There was a long silence on the other end, then a heavy sigh. "Oh, Bethany, I told her not to do it. I told her you would find out." "Find out what, Joyce?" "Kevin is in trouble again. Deep trouble. It's not just gambling this time. It's investment fraud, I think, or loans from bad people. I don't know the details, but he owes nearly $250,000. These people, they threatened Tanya. They threatened the kids." My grip on the phone tightened. "Go on." "He promised his creditors he has an asset, a waterfront property. He showed them pictures of the lake house. He promised he would sign it over to them by January 1st to settle the debt. If he doesn't, well, he's terrified." The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The urgency, the Cabo trip, probably hiding from creditors, not a vacation. The sudden need to get me to pay for the renovations so the house would be appraised higher.
So, I whispered, Mom isn't just giving him the house to live in. She's giving it to him so he can hand it over to criminals to clear his debt. She thinks she's saving his life, Bethany. She says you have plenty of money, so you won't mind if the inheritance goes to Kevin. She says you don't need the house. I don't need the house? My voice trembled, not with sadness, but with fury. I paid for the house, Joyce. I own it. Does she know that? I mean, really know that? She signed the papers. She just chose to forget. Bethany, listen to me, Joyce said, her voice sharp. You need to leave. Just get in your car and leave. Let them figure it out. If you stay, it's going to get ugly. No, I said immediately. If I leave, they'll destroy the place. Or worse, Kevin will try to forge a deed and drag me into a legal battle with loan sharks. I have to stop this here. I have to end it.
What are you going to do? I looked at the screen, at the folder labeled the black box. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, I said. Mom wants a perfect Christmas party? I'll give her the best party she's ever had. I'm going to cook, I'm going to clean, I'm going to be the perfect daughter. And then, when everyone is watching, I'm going to burn their fantasy to the ground. Be careful, Bethany. I don't need to be careful, Aunt Joyce. I have the receipts. I hung up. I didn't feel tired anymore. I felt energized. I had a plan. I wasn't just a guest at this party. I was the producer of this show, and the season finale was going to be spectacular. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was quiet, the heavy breathing of the children the only sound. I went to the kitchen, made a pot of strong coffee, and opened my laptop again. I needed more than just the deed. If I was going to expose them, I needed to make it irrefutable. I needed to turn this family drama into a forensic audit. I sent an email to Mr. Henderson. He was the family lawyer, or at least that's what Mom thought. He had been Dad's lawyer for decades, but when I bailed the family out 5 years ago, Henderson had switched his allegiance. He was a man of logic, and he respected people who paid their bills. He despised Kevin. Subject: the lake house transfer, urgent. Dear Mr. Henderson, my mother intends to execute a deed transfer of the lake property to Kevin on December 25th. As you know, she does not hold the title. Kevin intends to use the asset to settle a $250K debt immediately. I need you to be present at the party. I need an official witness when the truth comes out. Can you make it? Bethany. His reply came 3 minutes later. Henderson was an early riser. Bethany. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll bring the certified copies of the 2018 sale. Do you want me to bring security? If Kevin is desperate enough to promise a house he doesn't own to loan sharks, he is volatile. H. Yes, I typed back. Discreet security. With the legal side secured, I turned my attention to the domestic front. Mom stumbled into the kitchen at 10 a.m., looking hungover. She was wearing a silk robe I had bought her for Mother's Day. Is coffee ready? She grumbled, not looking at me. Fresh pot on the counter, I said cheerfully, and I made pancakes for the kids. They're eating on the patio. She blinked, surprised by my mood. She was expecting me to be sullen. Oh, good. Did you clean the bathrooms? Sparkling, I lied. I had cleaned them, but sparkling was a stretch for plumbing from 1980. Mom, I was thinking, since this party is so important to you, I want to help with the budget. Can you give me the folder with all the vendor contracts, the caterer, the florist, the tent rental? Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why, you trying to cut costs? We need this to be elegant, Bethany, not cheap. No, quite the opposite, I smiled, channeling my best corporate mask. I want to make sure everyone is paid on time so they prioritize us. Plus, I can write some of it off as a business expense if I run it through my company. It saves you money. Greed is a powerful blinder. The mention of saving her money made her suspicion evaporate instantly. Well, that's actually helpful for once, she said, pointing to a drawer. Everything is in there, but don't cancel anything without asking me. Of course not. I took the folder. I wasn't going to pay them. I was going to investigate them. I spent the afternoon working in the study. In reality, I was scanning every document. I found invoices for the caterer, marked up by 20%.
I found a bill for a consulting fee paid to a company called KT Solutions. KT Solutions. Kevin and Tanya. I ran a quick search. It was a shell company registered 3 weeks ago. Mom was paying Kevin a consulting fee to help organize his own party, using the money I had sent her for the roof repairs. I felt a vein throb in my temple. I had sent $10,000 for a leaking roof. She had funneled $4,000 of it to Kevin, likely to pay interest on his gambling debts. I added the scanned invoice to the black box folder. Item 402, misappropriation of funds, roof repair money diverted to Kevin. Then I did something invasive, but necessary. While Mom was outside yelling at the landscapers, I went into her bedroom. I found her iPad on the nightstand. I knew her passcode. It was Kevin's birthday, 0422. I opened her emails. I searched for Kevin. Hundreds of emails. Most were him asking for money, but the recent ones were damning. From Kevin to Mom. Subject, the plan. Mom, you have to make sure Bethany stays in the kitchen during the party. I don't want her talking to the investors I'm inviting. Just keep her busy. Tell her she looks tired or something. Once I get the deed, I can leverage it for the loan by Monday. We just need to survive Christmas. From Mom to Kevin. Don't worry, baby. She's desperate for approval. I'll tell her how much we appreciate her help. She'll do whatever we say. Just make sure Tanya is nice to her for a few days. I took photos of the emails with my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt cold, surgical. They weren't just using me. They were mocking me. They were laughing at my loyalty. I heard the front door open. Mom was coming back in. I placed the iPad back exactly where it was and slipped out of the room. I walked back to the kitchen where I started chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife hit the cutting board with a rhythmic, heavy thud. 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 I was building a case, and like any good prosecutor, I knew you don't reveal your evidence until the defendant is on the stand. Bethany, Mom called out from the living room. The florist just called. They need another deposit. Can you handle that? Sure, Mom, I called back, my voice sweet as poison. Put it on my tab. Keep asking, Mom, I thought. Keep digging the hole, because I'm about to bury you in it. By the time December 20th rolled around, I had transformed the lake house from a frat house disaster into a magazine-ready venue. I was exhausted, sleeping 4 hours a night, but adrenaline kept me going. I had moved into the next phase of my plan, surveillance. It sounds paranoid, I know, but in my line of work, if you suspect embezzlement, you monitor the channels. And this was emotional and financial embezzlement on a grand scale. I had brought a few nanny cams with me, small, unobtrusive cubes I used to monitor my apartment when I traveled. I placed one in the living room, hidden behind a stack of books on the shelf. I placed another in the kitchen, atop the fridge, obscured by a cereal box. I wanted to catch them in their natural habitat. I wanted to jury, or in this case, the party guests and extended family, to see who they really were when they thought no one was watching. The footage didn't disappoint. On Tuesday, while I was at the grocery store buying $400 worth of food for the week, which Mom forgot to give me cash for, the camera in the living room caught Mom on the phone with her friend Sheila. I watched the footage on my phone in the parking lot. Oh, Bethany? Yes, she's here, Mom said, pouring herself a midday gin and tonic. She's such a martyr, Sheila. Honestly, it's exhausting. She acts like buying a few groceries is a heroic act. I told her, it's the least you can do since you don't have children to raise. At least Kevin gave me grandbabies. What has Bethany given me? Spreadsheets? She laughed. It was a cruel, cackling sound. Anyway, once Kevin gets the house, things will be different. He's going to build a guest house out back for me. He promised. Bethany would never do that. She's too selfish. Selfish. The woman who paid off the mortgage was selfish. The woman who was currently buying organic milk for her grandkids was selfish. I saved the clip. Evidence item. Character witness. But the real smoking gun came on Wednesday. My phone pinged with a notification from my credit card app. Authorized user transaction. $2,400 at Nordstrom. I frowned. I had given Mom a supplementary card years ago for emergencies, medical copays, car breakdowns. I called the bank immediately. I need details on a transaction just made. Yes, Miss Miller, a purchase at Nordstrom for $2,400. Items include, let's see, a Gucci handbag, men's loafers, and a silk scarf. Emergency loafers, of course. I didn't cancel the card. Not yet. Instead, I went into the house. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, looking through a catalog. "Mom," I asked casually, putting away the milk, "did you need anything from the store? I just got a fraud alert on the emergency card." She didn't even look up. "Oh, don't worry about that. I picked up a few Christmas gifts for Kevin and Tanya. They've had such a hard year. I wanted to get them something nice." "You spent $2,000 on my card for Kevin's gifts?" "Well, I couldn't use mine, could I? I'm saving my cash for the party. Besides, you make that much in a day. Don't be petty, Bethany. It's Christmas. Consider it your gift to them." "So I'm buying Kevin a Gucci bag from you?" "You're buying it for the family," she corrected. "And don't make a scene. You're always counting pennies. It's unbecoming." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive. "Okay," I said. "Just wanted to check." I walked out of the room. I opened my laptop. I created a new slide in my PowerPoint presentation. Yes, I was making a PowerPoint. Slide 7, the emergency funds. Image, bank notification screenshot. Audio clip. Don't be petty, Bethany. I was building a narrative. I wasn't just going to tell them no. I was going to show them exactly what they had done. I called Lawyer Henderson again. "Add credit card fraud to the list," I told him. "Bethany," his voice was grave, "if you pursue this, your mother could face charges. Is that what you want?" I paused. Did I want my mother in jail? No. Did I want her to understand consequences for the first time in her life? Yes. I want leverage, Henderson. Absolute, crushing leverage. I want them to be so terrified of the legal ramifications that they never ask me for a dime again. Understood. I'm drafting the eviction notice as we speak. Do you want it served before or after the cake? Let's serve it with the main course, I said. It aids digestion. I hung up and looked at the calendar. December 21st. 2 days until Kevin and Tanya returned. 4 days until the party. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the rats to come home. December 23rd. The prodigal son returned. I was in the driveway, power washing the siding of the garage, another task Mom deemed essential for the party aesthetic, when a sleek black convertible roared up the driveway. It wasn't Kevin's beat-up SUV. It was a rental, a very expensive rental. Kevin hopped out, wearing sunglasses and a tropical shirt that was unbuttoned one too many buttons. He looked tanned, rested, and utterly pleased with himself. Tanya slid out of the passenger side, holding a straw hat, looking equally refreshed. Neither of them looked at the kids, who were playing in the yard. Neither of them looked at me. "Yo, Mother!" Kevin bellowed toward the house. "We're back. Get the champagne." I turned off the power washer. The sudden silence was ringing. Kevin finally noticed me. He lowered his sunglasses. "Oh, hey, Beth. You missed a spot up there." He pointed vaguely at the eaves. "Welcome back, Kevin," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "How was Cabo?" "Epic. Incredible. Needed it, man. The stress of business, you know?" Business. He hadn't worked a day in 2 years. "Where are the kids?" Tanya asked, looking around vaguely as if she had misplaced a set of keys. "They're in the yard. Braden scraped his knee yesterday, but he's fine. Chloe has a slight cough." Cool, Tanya said, not moving toward them. She opened the trunk. "Hey, Beth, grab these bags, will you? They're heavy. I don't want to break a nail before the party." I stood there, the power washer wand in my hand like a weapon. "Grab these bags." "I'm busy, Tanya," I said calmly. "My hands are wet." Kevin scoffed. "Jesus, always difficult. Fine, I'll get them." He grabbed 2 suitcases and hauled them onto the porch. Then he turned to me. "Hey, you need to move your car." "Why?" "I need the garage spot. This is a rental, high-end performance. I can't leave it out in the frost. Park your sedan down on the street." The street was a quarter-mile away, down a steep, muddy hill. "The garage has 2 spots, Kevin. Mom's car is in one, mine is in the other. There's no room." "Right," he grinned, a shark-like expression. "So move yours. Mom says the house is basically mine anyway, so I'm calling executive privilege. Chop chop, sis." My knuckles turned white around the pressure washer handle. I could spray him. It would be so easy.
Just a high-pressure blast of cold water right to that smug face. But no, that would be emotional. That would be petty. I needed to be strategic. "Sure, Kevin," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'll move it right now. I wouldn't want your rental to get cold." He didn't catch the sarcasm. He just tossed me his keys. "Park it inside for me, would you? And don't scratch it. It's worth more than your life." I caught the keys. Worth more than my life. I moved my car. I parked his rental in the garage. But while I was in the garage, I noticed he had left his dash cam on. Curious, I popped the SD card out. I had brought a card reader with me. Back in my room, I checked the footage. The audio from their drive up the mountain was crystal clear.
"I'm telling you, Tanya, it's in the bag." Kevin's voice filled my headphones. "Mom says Bethany has no clue. Once I get the deed on Christmas, I'll sign it over to Rocco on Monday. That clears the debt. Then we kick Bethany out, tell her we need space. We can probably guilt her into giving us another 10 grand for moving costs before she goes." "But what if she fights it?" Tanya asked. "She won't. She's weak. She's desperate for Mom to love her. She'll do whatever we say. She's basically a golden retriever with a checkbook." A golden retriever with a checkbook. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. I saved the clip. Evidence item, premeditated malice. That night at dinner, the dynamic had shifted. Kevin sat at the head of the table, Dad's seat.
Dad was sitting quietly on the side, looking beaten down. Mom was beaming, ladling lasagna onto Kevin's plate like he was a returning war hero. "This lasagna is a bit dry, Bethany," Kevin said with his mouth full. "Did you use the cheap cheese?" "I used the cheese Mom bought," I said. "Well, next time, spring for the good stuff. If you're gonna cook, do it right." "So, Kevin," I asked, sipping my water, "how is the business going? KT Solutions, right?" The room went silent. Kevin choked on his pasta. Mom dropped her fork. How did you know the name?" Kevin stammered, his eyes darting to Mom. "Oh, Mom mentioned she hired a consultant." I lied smoothly. "I just assumed it was you. You're so talented at solutions." "Yeah." "Yeah, exactly," Kevin recovered, puffed up his chest. "We're doing consulting for high-end event planning. Very exclusive." "That sounds fascinating," I said. "I'd love to see your business plan sometime. Maybe I could invest." Kevin's eyes lit up. Greed. Pure, unadulterated greed. "Really?" "Yeah. I mean, we're looking for angel investors. I can show you the deck next week, after the holidays." "I can't wait," I said. Mom smiled, looking relieved. "See? I told you everyone would get along. Bethany, get your brother more wine." I stood up. I walked to the sideboard. I poured the wine. "Drink up, Kevin," I thought. "Enjoy the Last Supper." Christmas Day. The deadline. The house was buzzing by noon. I had been up since 5 a.m., prepping canapes, glazing the ham, and roasting 2 turkeys. The kitchen was a sauna, filled with the smell of sage, rosemary, and the overwhelming scent of my own sweat. I wasn't wearing a festive dress. I was wearing an apron over black slacks and a white shirt, the uniform Mom had subtly suggested. "You don't want to get your nice clothes dirty, Bethany. Just wear something practical." By 4 p.m., the guests arrived. 30 people, a mix of family friends, Mom's church group, and a few of Kevin's business associates, men in flashy suits who looked around the property with calculating eyes. I recognized the look. They were appraising the asset. One of them, a man with a thick gold chain, wandered into the kitchen while I was pulling a tray of stuffed mushrooms out of the oven. "Nice place," he grunted. "You the help?" I froze. I looked at him. I could have corrected him. I could have said, "I'm the owner, the CFO, and the person whose name is on the deed you're hoping to steal." Instead, I smiled. "I'm Bethany. I'm just handling the food today." "Right, needs more salt," he said.
grabbing a mushroom and walking out. I watched him go. That was Rocco, the loan shark. Kevin had actually invited his loan shark to the Christmas party. The arrogance was staggering. Mom came rushing in a moment later. She looked resplendent in a red velvet gown and the diamond earrings I had bought her for her 60th birthday. "Bethany, the champagne buckets are empty. Why aren't you circling the room?" "I'm managing the oven, Mom. I can't be in two places at once." "Well, hurry up. Kevin is about to make a toast and everyone needs a full glass."
"And fix your hair. You look like a mess." She reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. It wasn't a gesture of affection. It was a grooming adjust, like fixing a horse's mane before a show. "You're doing a good job, sweetie," she whispered, but her eyes were cold. "Just keep it up for a few more hours. Then you can relax." Relax, meaning pack your bags and get out. "I'll get the champagne," I said. I walked into the living room with 2 bottles of Dom Perignon, which I had paid for. The room was full of laughter, clinking glasses, and the warm glow of the fireplace. Kevin was holding court by the tree, telling a loud, exaggerated story about his trip to Cabo. Tanya was showing off her new Gucci bag, the one bought with my card. "So I told the pilot, if you can't land this thing, I will." Kevin laughed, and the sycophants laughed with him. I moved through the crowd, refilling glasses. I felt like a ghost in my own life. People looked through me or handed me their empty napkins. Then the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I called out. I opened the door. Standing there was Mr. Henderson. He was wearing a tuxedo, looking every bit the high-powered attorney he was. Behind him were 2 large men in dark suits. Security. "Good evening, Bethany," Henderson said, winking. "Are we too late for the appetizers?" "Just in time for the main event," I whispered. "Who is it?" Mom called out, annoyed at the interruption. "It's Mr. Henderson, Mom," I announced, leading them into the living room. The room went quiet. Henderson was a known figure in town, feared and respected. "Oh, Gerald." Mom put on her charming hostess smile, though she looked confused. I didn't know you were coming. We didn't send an invite." "Bethany invited me," Henderson said smoothly, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing tray. "As the family attorney, I thought it best to be present." Mom paled slightly. She shot a glare at me. "Why did you invite him?" But Kevin stepped forward, grinning. He saw this as an opportunity. A lawyer witnessing the transfer, it made it more legitimate. "Great to see you, Henderson." Kevin shook his hand aggressively. "Actually, perfect timing. Mom and I were just about to get to the speeches." Kevin turned to the room, raising his glass. The loan shark, Rocco, leaned against the wall, watching intently. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," Kevin shouted. The room quieted down. "First off, Merry Christmas. It's great to have you all here at our family lake house." He emphasized the word our. "This has been a tough year, but we've pulled through because we're Millers. We're survivors." He put an arm around Mom. She beamed, tears in her eyes. "And my mom, she's the rock of this family. She's decided to give me the greatest gift a son could ask for, a legacy, a foundation for my future and my kids' future." My stomach churned, the audacity. "Mom, do you want to do the honors?" Kevin asked. Mom cleared her throat. She reached behind the Christmas tree and pulled out a large red envelope. "Kevin," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "you are my son, my heart. I know you've had some stumbles, but I believe in you. This house, your father and I built this home with love, and now we want you to have it, to raise your children here, to carry on the name." She held out the envelope. "Inside this envelope is the deed to the property," she announced, "signed and notarized. The house is yours, Kevin." Applause broke out. Tanya squealed. Rocco nodded approvingly from the corner. I stood by the kitchen door, watching. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it, the moment of truth. I reached into my apron pocket. I didn't have a red envelope. I had a flash drive and a thick manila folder. I walked into the center of the room. The clicking of my heels on the hardwood floor cut through the applause. "Wait," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. It carried. The applause died down. Mom looked at me, furious. "Bethany, not now. We're having a moment." "I know," I said, stepping closer to Kevin. "I just think there's a mistake in that envelope, Mom." "Don't be jealous, Bethany," Kevin smeared. "Just because Mom didn't give it to you. Sit down." "I'm not jealous, Kevin," I smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. "I'm just confused, because Mom can't give you this house." "And why not?" Mom snapped. "I am your mother. It is my house." "Actually, Mom," I said, pulling out my document, "it's not. You sold it 5 years ago." I turned to the guests. I turned to Rocco. "And you can't give away something that already belongs to me." Mom turned pale. Kevin's glass froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" Mom whispered. "Read line 4, Mom," I said, thrusting the paper into her hand. "Lakeview Holdings, LLC. Sole member, Bethany Miller. I own this house. I own the land. I own the roof you're standing under. And Kevin?" I looked at my brother. "You're trespassing." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence that sucks the air out of a room. You could hear the crackle of the fireplace and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Mom looked down at the paper in her hands. Her hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled.
This is fake," she stammered, looking up at me with wild eyes. "This is some kind of sick joke. Bethany, stop it. You're ruining Christmas." "It's not a joke, Linda." Mr. Henderson stepped forward. His voice was deep, authoritative, the voice of the law. "I prepared those documents myself in 2018. When the bank was foreclosing on you, Bethany purchased the debt. The title transferred to her LLC. You signed it. Your husband signed it. It was notarized." I thought that was just for taxes," Mom screeched. "I didn't know she was actually taking my house." "You didn't listen," I said, my voice rising. "You were so relieved to be saved that you didn't bother to read what you were signing. You just assumed I would keep paying for everything forever without owning anything."
"You thought I was just the ATM." Kevin stepped in, his face red, veins bulging in his neck. He dropped the cool guy act instantly. "You bitch, you tricked her. You manipulated an old woman to steal our inheritance." "Steal?" I laughed. "I saved it. If it weren't for me, this house would have been auctioned off 5 years ago. You would be homeless." "It's my birthright," Kevin screamed, stepping toward me with a raised fist. The 2 security guards Henderson had brought stepped forward instantly, blocking Kevin's path. Kevin stopped, chest heaving, looking from the guards to me. "And you," I pointed at Kevin, then looked directly at Rocco in the corner. "You promised this house as collateral for a loan, didn't you? You told your investors that you would have the deed today."
Rocco straightened up. He looked at Kevin. He didn't look happy. "Kevin," Rocco said, his voice low and gravelly, "is this true? You don't own the rock?" Rocco, listen, she's lying. It's a technicality," Kevin stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "It's not a technicality," I said, holding up the flash drive. "And I have proof of everything. The plan to kick me out, the emails, the dashcam footage, the credit card fraud." I walked over to the large flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace, the TV I had bought them last Christmas. I plugged in the flash drive. "What are you doing?" Mom cried. "Bethany, stop! Don't you dare!" "You wanted a show, Mom? You wanted a big party? Let's give the guests some entertainment." I clicked play. Kevin's voice filled the room, booming through the surround sound speakers. "She's basically a golden retriever with a checkbook. Once I get the deed, we kick Bethany out, change the locks." The guests gasped. Tanya covered her mouth. Mom sank onto the sofa, looking like she was having a stroke. Then came Mom's voice. "She's just the help, Kevin. She was born to serve us." I let it play. I let every word hang in the air. I watched the faces of their friends, their church members, the people they tried so hard to impress. I saw shock. I saw disgust. I paused the recording. "I was born to serve you?" I asked Mom, who was now weeping into her hands. I was the one who paid for your hip surgery. I paid for the roof. I paid for this party.
I paid for the food in your stomachs right now. I turned to Kevin. And you wanted to kick me out of my house? Bethany, please, Mom sobbed. We were stressed. We didn't mean it. We're family. Family doesn't steal, I said coldly. Family doesn't plot. Family doesn't treat their daughter like a servant and their son like a king just because he has a Y chromosome. I looked at Mr. Henderson. Give them the papers. Henderson handed a stack of documents to Kevin and Mom. What is this? Kevin whispered. Eviction notice, I said, effective immediately. You can't do this, Kevin said, his voice breaking. It's Christmas. I have kids. Where are we supposed to go? You have a rental car, I said.
And you have a week in Cabo that you paid for with Mom's stolen money. I suggest you go there, because you're not staying here. Bethany, Mom wailed. You're throwing your mother out on the street on Jesus' birthday? No, Mom. I'm asking you to leave my property. You can go to Aunt Joyce's. She said she'd take you in, but only you, not Kevin, not Tanya. I won't go, Mom screamed. She stood up, her face twisted in ugly rage. I won't leave my house, you ungrateful, hateful little spinster. You'll die alone. No one will ever love you. The room went deadly silent. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. The cord was cut. Maybe, I said softly, but I'll die in my own house, with my own money and my own dignity. I turned to the security guards.
Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Miller and their guests off the premises. Everyone has 30 minutes to clear out. The party's over, I announced to the room. Get out. Rocco looked at Kevin, cracked his knuckles, and walked out the door. We'll talk in the parking lot, Kevin. Kevin turned pale as a sheet. He looked at me, pleading. Bethany, Rocco is going to kill me. You can't let him take me. I'm not the police, Kevin, I said, turning my back on him. And I'm not your bank anymore. Good luck. As the chaos erupted, screaming, crying, guests scrambling for their coats, I walked calmly into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of the Dom Perignon. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. The minutes following my declaration were a blur of chaotic satisfaction.
You might think that eviction is a swift act, like ripping off a Band-Aid, but in a room full of social climbers and judgment, it is a slow, agonizing bleed, and I watched every second of it. Mom was still shrieking on the sofa, a mix of theatrical sobbing and genuine terror. She kept looking around the room, trying to make eye contact with her friends, seeking an ally, someone, anyone, who would jump to her defense and say, "How dare you treat your mother this way?" But nobody did. The silence I mentioned earlier had broken, replaced by the hushed, frantic whispers of 30 people realizing they were witnessing the social execution of Linda Miller. The evidence on the screen was still frozen, my mother's voice caught in that damning waveform, declaring me born to serve.
It was impossible to unhear. Please, Mom gasped, reaching out to Sheila, her best friend of 20 years. Sheila, talk to her. Tell her she's crazy. Sheila, a woman who usually thrived on gossip, looked at Mom with an expression I had never seen before. Pity mixed with revulsion. She pulled her fur coat tighter around her shoulders. Linda, she said, her voice icy, I think we should go. This is a family matter. And frankly, I'm disgusted. Disgusted with her? Mom pointed a trembling finger at me. With you, Sheila clarified, stepping back. I have 2 daughters, Linda. If I ever spoke about them the way you just spoke about Bethany, God forgive you. Sheila walked past me. She paused, looked me in the eye, and nodded. It wasn't a warm nod, but it was a respectful one.
The food was delicious, Bethany. You're too good for them. That was the first domino. Once Sheila left, the floodgates opened. The guests didn't just leave, they fled. They scrambled for their coats and purses like the house was on fire.
But as they passed me, standing in the center of the room, holding my glass of champagne, the dynamic had shifted completely. They weren't looking through me anymore. They were looking at me with fear and awe. "Sorry about this," one of Kevin's business partners muttered, avoiding eye contact as he hurried out. "Good luck, dear," an elderly neighbor whispered, patting my arm. Within 10 minutes, the room was empty of guests. The only people left were the cast of this tragedy: me, Mom, Kevin, Tanya, the kids, who were terrified and huddled in the hallway, Mr. Henderson, the security guards, and the smell of cooling turkey. Kevin was pacing near the fireplace, his face a mask of panic. He kept checking his phone, likely looking for Rocco, who was waiting outside like a vulture. "You happy now?" Kevin spat at me, though his voice lacked its usual venom. It was thin, shaky. "You humiliated us. You destroyed Mom's reputation." "She destroyed it herself," I said calmly, setting my glass down. "I just played the tape." "We're not leaving," Tanya announced, crossing her arms over her chest, clutching the Gucci bag I had paid for. "We have rights. We have kids. You can't just kick us out in the snow." Mr.
Henderson stepped forward, adjusting his cufflinks. "Actually, Mrs. Miller, you are guests. You have no lease, no rental agreement, and no ownership interest. In the state's eyes, you are trespassing. Bethany has revoked her permission for you to be here. If you do not vacate the premises in," he checked his gold watch, "20 minutes, the security team will physically remove you, and I will call the sheriff to press charges for criminal trespassing." "You wouldn't," Tanya hissed. Mom stood up, her legs wobbly. She wiped her face, her makeup smeared into a grotesque mask. She walked toward me, not with aggression this time, but with a horrifying attempt at manipulation. She tried to touch my face. "Bethany," she crooned, her voice cracking. "Baby, look at me."
"I'm your mommy. I know you're hurt. I know we said some bad things, but we were just venting. You know how stress gets to us. You can't do this. We're your blood." I looked at her hand hovering near my cheek, the same hand that had slapped me when I was 16 because I got a B on a report card. The same hand that had signed checks from my account without asking. "Blood is a biological accident, Mom," I said, stepping back out of her reach. "Family is behavior, and your behavior has been predatory for years." "I gave you life," she screamed, the mask dropping instantly. "And I bought you a life," I screamed back, my composure finally fracturing just a fraction. The raw pain surged up, hot and blinding. "I bought you this house. I bought you your car. I bought you your dignity. And you sold me out for a son who would sell you for a poker chip." I pointed to the door. "Get out, before I add the jewelry you're wearing to the lawsuit." Mom gasped, clutching her diamond earrings, the ones I bought. "You wouldn't." "Those were a gift," Henderson interjected. "However, the car in the garage, the Mercedes, that is titled under the LLC, isn't it, Bethany?" "It is," I said. "Then you aren't taking the car either," Henderson said to Mom. "I suggest you call a cab, or maybe Kevin can squeeze you into his rental." Mom looked at Kevin. Kevin looked away. He didn't want his mother in his cool sports car. He didn't want the burden. That was the final blow. Mom realized in that split second that her golden child didn't want to save her. "Kevin," she whispered. "You'll take me, won't you?" "Mom, the car is small," Kevin muttered, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "And I have Tanya and the kids, and the luggage. There's no room." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "There it is, Mom. There's your prize. Enjoy him." I turned to the security guards. "Start moving the luggage to the curb." The guards moved efficiently. They grabbed the Louis Vuitton bags, the plastic toys, the boxes of presents that Mom had bought with my money. They marched them out the front door and dumped them on the frozen gravel of the driveway. Tanya shrieked and ran after her bags. Kevin followed, cursing under his breath. Mom stood there for one last second, looking at the warm, beautiful room, the twinkling Christmas tree, the life she had felt entitled to. Then she looked at me with pure hatred. "I have no daughter," she spat. "I know," I said softly. "You never did. You just had an employee." She turned and walked out into the cold. I didn't watch them go. I couldn't. Instead, I walked over to the iPad, which was still connected to the sound system, and stopped the recording. The silence rushed back in, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. Mr. Henderson walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did good, kid. Your dad would have been, well, he would have been conflicted, but he would have respected the accounting." "Where is Dad?" I asked, realizing I hadn't seen him during the exodus. "He's in the garage," Henderson said gently. "He's sitting in your car. He told me to tell you he's sorry."
He said he's going with your mother because she can't survive on her own, but he wanted you to know he signed the eviction papers willingly. I closed my eyes. Dad, the passive enabler. He chose his side too. "Okay," I whispered. The front door slammed shut. They were gone. But the night wasn't over. Outside, in the dark, the real reckoning was waiting for Kevin, and I had a front row seat. I moved to the window, the same bay window where I had overheard their plot just days ago. Outside, the driveway was illuminated by the harsh yellow floodlights of the garage. It looked like a stage set for a gritty crime drama. The temperature had dropped to 10 degrees. The wind was whipping off the lake, stinging and cruel.
My family huddled by the pile of luggage like refugees, but refugees with designer clothes and zero survival skills. Kevin was frantically trying to shove suitcases into the tiny trunk of the convertible rental. Tanya was screaming at him, her voice muffled by the glass, but her body language unmistakable. She was pointing at the house, then at the car, then at the kids who were crying in the back seat. Mom stood apart from them, wrapped in her coat, shivering. She looked small. For the first time in my life, she looked frail. She was trying to call someone on her phone, probably Aunt Joyce, but she kept looking back at the house, hoping I would crack, hoping I would run out with a blanket and an apology. I sipped my champagne. I stayed right where I was. Then, the second act began. A black SUV pulled out from the shadows of the tree line near the road. It rolled slowly up the driveway, crunching over the snow. Kevin froze. He knew that car. Rocco stepped out. He wasn't alone. 2 other men, large and dressed in heavy coats, stepped out with him. They didn't look like party guests anymore. They looked like collections agents. I cracked the window open just an inch. I needed to hear this. "Kevin," Rocco's voice drifted up, carried by the wind. "We have a problem." "Rocco, look, it's a misunderstanding." Kevin's voice was high-pitched, bordering on hysterical. "My sister, she's crazy. She forged the documents. I own this place. I can prove it. Just give me until Monday." "You don't own the dirt on your shoes, Kevin," Rocco said calmly. He leaned against the hood of Kevin's rental car. "I just made a call. I checked the county records online. Public information, idiot. Lakeview Holdings, LLC. Established 2018. You haven't owned this house in 5 years." I didn't know," Kevin stammered. "Lying to me is bad, Kevin. Trying to pay me with stolen property? That's insulting." Rocco stepped closer. "You owe me $250 large, and you promised me a house today. I don't see a house. I see a convertible that belongs to Hertz." "I can get the money," Kevin pleaded. I have inventory. My business." "Your business is a shell," Rocco spat. "And now you have no collateral, which means we have to discuss alternative payment plans." One of the large men grabbed Kevin by the arm. Tanya screamed. "Don't touch him," Mom yelled, rushing forward, swinging her purse at the man. "Leave my son alone." The man shoved Mom back, gently but firmly enough that she stumbled and fell onto a pile of snow. "Mom!" Kevin screamed, but he didn't move to help her. He was too paralyzed by his own fear. That was when the blue and red lights washed over the driveway. I hadn't called the police for the eviction, but Mr. Henderson had called them an hour ago, the moment I showed the evidence of the credit card fraud and the diverted roof funds. 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up, blocking the exit. The deputies stepped out, hands on their holsters. "Everyone calm down,"
the lead deputy shouted. For a second, Kevin looked relieved. He thought the police were there to save him from Rocco.
He actually ran toward the officers. "Officer, thank God! These men are threatening me!" The deputy looked at Kevin, then at Rocco, then at a clipboard in his hand. "Are you Kevin Miller?" Yes, that's me." "Kevin Miller, I have a warrant for your arrest regarding check fraud and identity theft," the deputy said, spinning Kevin around and slamming him against the hood of the cruiser. "What? No, I'm the victim here," Kevin howled as the cuffs clicked. "We have evidence submitted by the victim, Bethany Miller, and verified by bank records," the deputy recited. "You are also being detained for questioning regarding illegal gambling debts associated with organized crime." The deputy looked at Rocco. "And you gentlemen? You want to explain why you're harassing this man?" Rocco raised his hands, smiling smoothly. "No harassment, officer. We were just leaving the party, just discussing a business disagreement. We're going." Rocco got back in his SUV. As he drove past the cruiser where Kevin was being shoved into the back seat, he rolled down his window. He pointed a finger at Kevin. Pop, pop, a pantomime gun. Kevin collapsed into the back seat, sobbing. Tanya was hysterical now, screaming at the police that they couldn't take him, that she couldn't drive the rental car because she didn't have a license. Mom pulled herself up from the snow. She watched her golden boy, her prince, being hauled away like a common criminal. She looked at the police, then she looked up at the window. She saw me. Our eyes locked across the distance. I expected her to scream. I expected her to curse me. But she didn't. She just slumped. Her shoulders caved in. The arrogance that had fueled her for 68 years evaporated into the winter air. She looked like a ghost. She turned away, shivering violently, and climbed into the back seat of the rental car with the crying children, waiting for Tanya to figure out how to drive. Mr. Henderson walked up behind me. "It's done," he said softly. "Not yet," I said, watching the taillights of the police car fade into the darkness. "They still have keys to the front door." "I already had the locksmith change the tumblers while you were serving the appetizers," Henderson smiled. "I told you, I'm thorough." I looked at him, surprised. Then, for the first time in days, I genuinely smiled. "Thank you, Gerald." "Don't thank me. Just pay my invoice. It's going to be hefty." "Worth every penny," I said. The driveway was empty now. The SUV was gone. The police were gone. The rental car finally lurched forward, stalling twice before Tanya managed to get it moving down the hill. Silence returned to the lake. The wind howled, but inside, the fire was still crackling. I walked to the kitchen. The feast I had prepared, the turkey, the ham, the sides, was sitting there, cooling. A banquet for ghosts. I wasn't hungry, but I wasn't sad either. I felt a strange, hollow lightness, like I had been carrying a backpack full of rocks for decades, and someone had finally cut the straps. I grabbed a trash bag. I started clearing the table. I scraped the expensive food into the bin. I threw away the half-drunk wine. I threw away the Christmas crackers. I was cleaning house. The next morning, the sun rose over the lake in a blinding explosion of white and gold. The snow was pristine, covering the tire tracks and the footprints of the night before. I woke up in the master bedroom. I had never slept in the master bedroom before. It was always Mom and Dad's sanctuary. But last night, after the locksmith left and the security guards clocked out, I took my things from the cramped guest room and moved them into the master suite. I stripped the bed of Mom's floral sheets and threw them in the trash. I found a set of crisp white linens in the closet, a gift I had given them years ago that they had never opened, and made the bed. Sleeping there felt like reclaiming territory. The house was aggressively quiet. No screaming kids, no TV blaring Fox News, no mom criticizing my outfit, just the hum of the heater and the chirping of a winter bird. I made coffee and sat on the deck, wrapped in a blanket. My phone buzzed. It was Aunt Joyce. "They're here," the text read. "Linda is in the guest room. She hasn't stopped crying. Your dad is sitting in the kitchen staring at the wall.
Tanya took the kids to her mother's house in Ohio. Kevin is still in holding. No bail set yet. I texted back, "Are you okay with them being there?" Joyce replied, "I'm fine." I set ground rules immediately.
I told Linda if she mentions your name with anything other than respect, she's on the street. She didn't say a word. I smiled. Aunt Joyce was the unsung hero of this saga. Thank you, Joyce. I'll wire you some money for their food, but don't give them cash. Keep your money, honey. Watching my sister finally face reality is payment enough. You just rest. I put the phone down. Rest. What a foreign concept. I spent the day walking through the house. I walked into every room, touching the walls, looking at the furniture. I realized something strange. I didn't like this house. I had bought it to save them. I had fought for it to prove I was worthy. I had evicted them to prove I was strong. But the house itself? It was a mausoleum of bad memories. Every corner held a ghost. The kitchen where Mom told me I was getting fat. The living room where Dad ignored me to watch football with Kevin. The hallway where I used to sit and cry after school. Possessing it was the victory. Keeping it would be a burden. By noon, I made a decision. I called a real estate agent I knew, a shark named Brenda who specialized in luxury waterfront properties. "Bethany, Merry Christmas," she chirped. "Merry Christmas, Brenda. I have a listing for you." "Oh, you buying another investment property?" "No, I'm selling the lake house. As is, furnished. I want it on the market by January 2nd. Brenda paused. "The family home? Are you sure? The market is a bit slow in winter." "Price it to move," I said. "I don't want top dollar. I want a quick close. I want it gone." "Okay."
Well, it's a prime location. I can probably get you a cash buyer within the month. But what about your parents? "They've relocated," I said, permanently. Hanging up that phone felt like shedding another layer of skin. I wasn't just evicting them, I was evicting the past. That afternoon, I did one final sweep of the house. I found a box in Mom's closet. It wasn't hidden, just shoved in the back. It was labeled Kevin's trophies. Inside were his participation mittens, his old report cards, mostly C's, and photos of him. Next to it was a smaller shoebox, no label. I opened it. Inside were my childhood drawings, a Mother's Day card I made when I was 7, a photo of me winning the chaotic debate championship. She had kept them. For a moment, a wave of grief hit me. It would have been easier if she was a cartoon villain who hated me completely, but this was the complexity of abuse. She loved me, in her own twisted, narcissistic way. She loved me as an extension of herself, as a utility, as a possession, but she didn't know how to love me as a person. I held the Mother's Day card. It said in crayon, "I love you, Mommy. Thank you for taking care of me." I cried then, not for the mother I had, but for the mother I wanted, the mother I deserved. I cried for the 7-year-old girl who tried so hard to be good. Then I wiped my eyes. I took the card. I walked to the fireplace, where the embers were still glowing. I tossed the card in. I watched the wax crayon melt and the paper curl into black ash. "You're welcome for taking care of you," I whispered to the fire. I packed my bag. I took my laptop, my hard drive with the black box evidence, and the one photo of me that hadn't been broken. I locked the front door. I put the key in the lockbox for the realtor. I walked to my par, my sensible, paid-off sedan. I looked back at the house one last time. It looked beautiful in the snow. Cold, imposing, and empty. "It's just a house," I said out loud. I got in the car and drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. 6 months later, I am sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. It's a penthouse in the city with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. It's modern, minimalist, and completely devoid of floral prints or dusty curtains. I bought it with the proceeds from the lake house sale. The house sold in 3 weeks. A nice young couple from Chicago bought it.
They sent me a letter saying they plan to tint the living room blue and turn the garage into an art studio. I'm glad. They'll scrub the bad energy out of the walls. My life is quiet, but it's a peaceful quiet. I haven't spoken to Mom or Dad since Christmas. I get updates from Aunt Joyce. Mom is miserable, apparently. Living with Joyce means living by rules. Joyce makes her do chores. Joyce controls the remote. Joyce doesn't tolerate tantrums. Mom has tried to call me a dozen times, leaving voicemails that range from weeping apologies to angry demands for money. I blocked her number last month. I haven't listened to a voicemail since. Kevin is...
Well, Kevin is in a state-sponsored facility. He took a plea deal for the check fraud and identity theft to avoid a longer sentence, but the loan sharks are still a problem. He's safe inside, ironically. Tanya divorced him in February. She took the kids and moved to Arizona to live with her sister. I send money to a trust fund for the kids, controlled by a lawyer, so Tanya can't touch it. I want my nieces and nephews to go to college. I want them to have a chance to escape the cycle. As for me, I'm still a CFO. I still love spreadsheets, but I've started doing other things. I started taking pottery classes. I joined a hiking club. And I met someone. His name is David. He's an architect. He met me when I was looking at this apartment. He's kind. He has his own money. He listens when I talk. Last week, I told him the story about Christmas. I was afraid he would think I was a monster. Who evicts their own mother? He listened to the whole thing, holding my hand. When I finished, he didn't judge me. He just squeezed my hand and said, "I'm proud of you. That took incredible strength." Proud of you. The words I had waited 38 years to hear from my parents, I finally heard from a stranger who was becoming a friend. I realized something important. The snap I felt that night wasn't me breaking. It was me healing. It was the sound of the chains snapping. I used to think my value was in what I could provide. I thought I was only lovable if I was useful, if I was the ATM, if I was the fixer. But now I know that no is a complete sentence. I know that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They are gates to protect the garden inside. My garden is blooming now. I stand up and walk to the railing. The city lights are twinkling below me like diamonds. I take a deep breath of the warm summer air. I am alone in this apartment, but I am not lonely. I am free. And honestly, that was the best Christmas present I ever gave myself. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who feels like they are drowning in obligation. See you next time.